Heavenly Sword is not only a bucket list game for me, but it's also a pretty significant piece to my gaming history when I think about it, because it was among the first demos that I ever downloaded when I got my PS3, alongside God of War 3 and Uncharted 2, I do believe. But for whatever reason, that whole process rarely, if ever, translated to me actually going to the store and buying these games. So this one sort of floated under my radar for quite a few years, up until recently when I finally got my hands on my very own copy and sat down to play it. And now that I have, I can tell you that, in my opinion, it's a pretty fantastic game that holds up even in 2025. The story here is awesome. Having Nariko as this protagonist that definitely has a sort of chip on her shoulder. She has a clan that doesn't really like her because she isn't this goddess who's capable of safely wielding the heavenly sword and protecting them from evil that she's prophesized to be. But there's also some personal issues with her father because of this, but also her mother was killed or died in childbirth, which she bears a lot of the blame for. So much so that her father actually thought about, planned, and tried to kill her, which is pretty intense. Um, but I think across the board, the characters here give this game so much life and personality, particularly the villains, who are as fun and quirky as they are sinister, which immediately puts them straight up my alley. Presentation wise, it's a very pretty game, absolutely beautiful. But it's very much a product of its time, in that it does everything it possibly can to show you its scale, right, and come across as epic and cinematic as anything else out there at the time. But that doesn't necessarily excuse the fact that we're talking about a nearing 20-year-old game here. Whether we like it or not, it's going to be janky in spots. It's going to be clunky in others. And while there are elements to it that hold up extraordinarily well, there's others that just age like milk. Um, and I think for me, its biggest detriments come from the quality of life stuff, or I guess in this case, lack thereof. Such as kind of a lack of any real checkpoint system. So when you die or you fail an objective, it's not quite as easy as just jumping straight into the part where you were stuck. You actually have to replay entire sections and get back to where you were and hope that you make it uh, that time. Couple that with some less than stellar load times from the PS3 era, and you can see how this would be a minor inconvenience or annoyance. But overall, still a very fantastic game that is very fun and well worth checking out if you haven't, even in present day. Now, you'll notice that if you read the title, it says partial playthrough. And this is because despite my best efforts, I wasn't actually able to beat the final boss. After about 3 to 4 hours of solid attempts, I thought it best to just preserve my sanity and pack it in, which would have been a pretty different story if there had been either A, some trophies to kind of drive me forward, or B, had it been a more mid-game boss. You know, the type of situation where it's like, okay, I have to lock in and make it past this guy if I want to see the rest of the game. But the fact is that I was one phase and a cutscene away from end credits, and it just wasn't worth it to me at that point. And there's a couple main reasons for this, I think. The first is that, you know, while I wouldn't necessarily say that the other boss fights in the game were particularly easy, this one definitely felt like a difficulty spike, like a hard wall. Um, this was definitely the point where the game said, okay, this is your last chance to show me everything that you've learned throughout your playtime and utilize some of those skills, of which I was a master of none, nor was I particularly comfortable or confident in any of it, uh, which obviously was a problem. That and it's structured a little bit differently compared to the rest of the boss fights in this game. What I mean by that is to say that each of the other boss fights serve as their own chapter. So basically, if you die, you just have to do the entire fight over again from the top. To offset this, they scatter some health pickups around the arena for you to use at your discretion. The unique thing about the final boss is that each of his three phases are a separate chapter, which in some instances, when you think about it, is quite nice, right? But to offset that, there are no health pickups, and you just kind of have to raw dog it and survive and hope you make it through on the other side. Um, and he's fast for one thing. Like inhuman, like my reaction times were nothing compared to what they needed to be for this guy. I felt like. Um, feel like in terms of damage output and everything like that, I was tickling his taint with a feather. Meanwhile, he was breaking every bone in my body, if that makes sense. Literally taking chunks off of my health bar with a single combo or whatever. Um, and then while fighting the boss, I was having to fight its performance issues. I don't know if this is the case with like emulators or anything like that, but I can tell you uh, that on native original hardware, there's some pretty glaring issues with performance. There are sections of this fight that take place on a battlefield with hundreds of guys on screen, which cause which cause that section to chug at like 2 frames a second or something like that. Like it's bad, which is obviously not conducive when you're in a boss fight that requires a lot of finesse and very um, you know, specific movements and things at very specific times in order to make it through this thing. Not to mention that all of those bodies actually block your view of some of the signals that he gives for what attack is coming up next. And yes, you can kind of go out of your way to kill them all, but of course it's a situation where if you take the time to do that, you're also taking your eye off the ball and could just get smoked by the boss that comes up behind you and slaps your cheeks. And you might think, well, just, you know, get in close and deal with him that way. So don't even pay attention to all the bodies and just focus on him. Except for the fact that he also has these big black wings that cover up your view and obstruct you from seeing what he's doing. So no matter what you do, it's kind of a crapshoot, and it just requires a lot of uh, luck, I feel like. But in my defense, I would say that this is exactly the type of game that at some point over the next few years, when I forget about it or I haven't played it in a while, I would pull it off my shelf and play again. And very much like the Valkyrie Queen before him, the next time I play this, I'm going to dedicate myself to beating him. So the next time I play Heavenly Sword, I'm coming for you, Raven King. But again, overall, just a fantastic game that anybody should play if they haven't yet. But that is going to wrap this video up, I think, guys. So as always, thanks for watching, take care of yourselves, and we'll catch you in the next one.